Hi, everyone. Today, I want to talk about, it's Live365, and it's day 9. And I want to talk today about a desire for human connection and social media and how we navigate these realms with our daily lives. Hi, Emma Cat. So, yeah, where do I want to start with that? I want to think about or discuss the world we live in today. We have this extra added sort of social media requirement of our lives now. And not everybody engages with it. However, a lot of people, it's required of them in order for them to interact and be keeping up with the world that we live in today, and marketing and things of that nature. But also, it has created this interesting dynamic within the collective where people become more isolated, and there's a little bit more of a dynamic of how do I navigate the social realms within life, and how do I navigate the social realms within social media? So it's like we're required to be online, we're required to interact socially within the virtual realms, and then there's life, and there's functioning and getting things done and having to show up on a physical level for our lives and interact with our relationships and human beings. And so it poses this weird dynamic that we are then challenged with to understand how to become connected in the physical and have human connection. And it has made it possible for us to communicate with people all over the world and stay connected with our friends that we meet and people that we meet in person, and have that opportunity for us to be in person with them and then be able to continue our relationship beyond that. So that's really cool. And at the same time, sometimes it's difficult for us to take a break from social media because we are used to now interacting online. And what it does is it keeps us focused on this little tiny box, rather than, looking down, rather than us being present and available for what life is showing us in the moment, right? So there are many tools that we could come up with to help us navigate social media and navigate the internet and navigate human interaction. And I will talk about those later, but right now I definitely want to talk about how do we navigate social media. I want to talk about the results of social media because I really feel like this is a discussion that people are having, but they're not really having it on an energetic level. They're not having it on a psychic level and like an empathic level. All the levels of energetics that happen with this and how it affects us in our daily lives and our emotions. And I mean, yeah, people are talking about it, but I just want to give my 2 cents. Maybe that's it. So all I can do really is share my experience. So my experience has been growing up without social media, growing up in a society where there were no computers at all. And how did we even function without them? How did we interact with others? How did we socialize? How did we meet people, right? For me, meeting people has never been a problem until now. And what I find now is I meet more people online than I meet in person because I spend most of my time, inside my house and operating and functioning within the virtual reality of things to be able to function and to navigate my realms of what I do and how I'm offering my gifts to the world. And so it's posed this interesting dynamic for me where I'm not going out as much and I'm not doing the same types of things that I would normally be doing because I'm living in I'm living in a city now, and I'm used to traveling around and doing stuff. So I've been sort of put into a normal situation again, where now it's posing a problem for me because I don't really know anybody here, and normally I would just go out and meet people, but this particular place that I'm in Los Angeles, it doesn't feel like a place that I want to engage with people so much. Not Los Angeles itself, but it's not community oriented where I am. And so it poses the question of how do I go about cultivating community in a place where the focus isn't community oriented, where, and that's what I'm used to living with, is being in community and being around community and socializing and interacting with people on a daily basis outside of my own personal space. So now I'm in my own personal space and I'm having to interact virtually to make a connection with people. There isn't a balance for me at this moment. So it poses an interesting question for me, is how do I go about finding ways to connect with people outside of my personal space and to be socializing and interacting with community within this area. So I used to live here 10 years ago. Sorry, I lived here for 20 years. But back then, there wasn't social media. So the way that my life was established was through the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a very huge social network, and I could literally call people on the phone anytime I wanted. We could go have lunch, fellowship, things of that nature. Now I'm in a different place where that's not as desirable to me to be going to meetings every day. It's just not something I want to spend my time doing because I'm focusing on other things. And I'm still sober from alcohol, of course, but I'm in a different place in my life where it's not a requirement for me to show up to meetings every day in order for me to stay sober. So that has no longer been sort of an attraction or a pull as a social mechanism for me. So then community, right? So what's the next form of community? Well, I have some people that I know in Topanga Canyon, not very many, maybe one or two. And there's a lot of people that I know in Los Angeles, but most of them, because of the fact that Los Angeles is so large, it would take me, like a $40 Uber ride to go see my friend in Echo Park, one way. So it'd be an $80 round trip for me to go see my friend for lunch, So that doesn't work either. Hello, son. Oh. So what the result of that has been, as I've reached into the virtual realms online to make connections. And as that happens, it disconnects me from life a little bit. And I've watched and observed myself in this process of, going towards my phone as opposed to being present and available in the world. So one of the tools that I've come up with for myself is I got to get out of the house. I got to go walk. I got to go shop in the stores, whatever I got to do to interact and be social, not like socialize with people out in the world necessarily, but just to be in society, just to interact with someone and to, be in the sun, right? And to get, photosynthesis into my cells, but also I've been craving social interaction and touch and those things that humans need. And when they're starved of it, it can cause a lot of problems in my physical body. My health has been affected, and the level of light that I have in my space in my house is not enough light for me. I like to have lots of light. I don't have a lot of light where I am. So it poses all of these problems. And But here's how social media poses a problem too, is when we are so focused inward or outward towards our phones, we miss what's going on around us, the magic, like, for instance, the other day I left the house and I had this experience with this raven literally dropping a hummingbird at my feet, nature talking to me. So yesterday when I went out into the world, there was a raven on a street lamp post again, and I was walking in a totally different area and I saw another raven, and the raven was gawking, and I looked up at it, I stopped, I engaged with it, and I was present with it, and there was no magic. And I was like, oh, I'm so disappointed. I wanted the raven to talk to me, but it was like, that's not necessarily going to happen, so that was kind of disappointing and frustrating, and like, I really wanted the raven to communicate with me in that moment, and it didn't. I mean, it looked at me and was like, what are you doing? Why are you gawking at me? And I was like, well, because I want to talk to you, but it was like, the raven didn't really care and didn't have anything to say to me. So I was like, oh, that wasn't magical, So I was kind of funny. And I kind of laughed at myself because I was thinking to myself, well, not every raven is going to be like tapping into divine source in that moment to hear what it needs to say to me, to communicate a message to me, like all of those things, even though I choose to be magical. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean the magic is going to happen in the moment if I try to force it, Magic is magic. Magic is its own thing. It lives within its own realm, right? And nature responds to it, but doesn't necessarily, cater to our magical needs as humans, right? And our desire for connection. But what I observed in that moment by squawking at the raven was that, and oh my gosh, I have like, okay, that's really annoying, but I'm not gonna, it doesn't matter. What I noticed about the interaction in my thought forms, in my observation of myself, was I was being kind of silly in that I expected the raven to respond, and that's because I need to cultivate my own magic, right? I need to cultivate my own magic in a way that it shows up in my virtual reality, so that it shows up in my experience, and then it exudes from me, and then that magic moves through social media, and then there's a response, right? Rather than me going to the social media expecting for connection, expecting a response, expecting the magic to come through social media or to come through a raven on the street lamp. It's about cultivating our own connection with spirit and with ourselves and with magic, and being able to energetically exude that energy from our experience, rather than looking outside of ourselves and horizontal harvesting to find the magic, right? Or dancing with it at least, so that we are participating in cultivating that magic and it showing up in our lives. So for a long time, I just want to share something that is really important to me. For a long time, I didn't talk about magic. I specifically avoided the subject of magic. And the reason why was because I had been burned at the stake in other lifetimes. I don't know what your beliefs are, but I had been persecuted and tortured for my magic. And so that posed an interesting problem for me, as being raised as a Christian, and everybody being afraid of magic and that it was dark and evil and all these things, when in fact, it is our divine source of energy, right, that exists within our bodies and is our consciousness. So here we are rejecting our consciousness, when in fact we should be cultivating our consciousness and cultivating the magic within our consciousness, right? So until I was willing to look at all of the ways that I had been persecuted and to unravel all of that stuff and to integrate it and bring it full circle, I wasn't able to own my magic at all. And once I did that, though, everything in my life started to change. I started to own who I was. I started to be fully present with who I am and to be okay with my shadow and to embrace my shadow and to try to find a way to integrate both aspects of myself. So the way that my shadow is showing up right now, and I'm being fully transparent, is I'm longing for connection, human touch, human something, you know, outside of my environment that can support me in feeling nurtured and feeling loved. And part of that is when someone is in your environment that is not engaging, it can create an imbalance and it can make you feel starved for connection. And so that's a new experience for me, and I'm not used to that. I've had that in the past, but not in an environment where I'm living with someone that I love. So it's been a challenge for me, and I've isolated myself quite a bit, and I've sort of trapped myself in a situation that feels uncomfortable for me, instead of going out into the world and socializing and interacting. And, you know, that has to do with where I'm living. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult to get around. But when social media plays a role in this, is that a lot of the younger generations, they literally grew up with social media. They don't know anything different. So they've had the opportunity to find that balance perhaps in their reality where they can be on social media or not be on social media. But it's so much a part of who they are that they choose to engage with social media. Whereas with someone like me, who's going to be 50 in February, by the way, and I'm kind of proud of that, you know, that I'm going to have been on this planet for 50 years in this body and survived everything that I have. But I'm finding it a lot more challenging to market myself and to show up on that level in social media. So for the last 10 years, I've kind of been hiding, you know, and especially in the last 5 years, I've been interactive on social media, but I haven't been, you know, shining my light in a way that I normally would. I'm not being as open or transparent as I normally would. I'm more cautious. I'm more present to what can happen if I say something. You know, I've become sort of aware of all the different levels of how social interaction on social media can be damaging and dangerous if I share my personal information, right? And actually that started happening for me in 2008. So like almost right away, like I think I joined Facebook in 2007, somewhere around there. No, that's not right. I don't remember. Anyway, I was on MySpace and I think I was on Facebook at that point. Somewhere around there, I joined Facebook, and I immediately started doing what I would normally do, which is interacting socially and saying, hey, I'm looking for an apartment. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I'm doing that. And for me, what happened was I was being watched and by the other set of parents. And so what happened was I was being spied on, and I had to like shut that down. I had to like get super private, super quick, and block and do all these things to protect myself energetically and in general on social media. And so that sort of, you know, gave me this like, whoa, Nelly kind of thing. Like maybe I'm not going to share my personal reality on social media. So I never have. And so now coming full circle 11 years later, you know, in order for me to step into my fullness, it has become a requirement for me to expand and to share of myself through social media, to be able to offer my gifts to the world and to show up on that level. And I've had a lot of trepidation about it. I've had a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Reticence in being willing to communicate certain things and certain vulnerabilities within the social media platforms. And so I've tried to just stay super positive. And also, you know, I'm a truth sayer, so I put out crazy stuff, and I, you know, put out posts that, you know, really like, whoa, hey, pay attention to this. Because for me, social issues are a big deal. And I really feel like if I can spread information, then cool, let me spread it. Doesn't mean I agree with it necessarily, and that my belief systems are 100% what that other person is saying. However, it's a way to interact, and it's a way to reveal information. And I like to, like a journalist kind of, I like to pose information, but I'm not necessarily giving an opinion. And so my desire for human connection is in my social media outlets, but I'm still missing like the physical interaction that's available to me in the physical. And I, you know, like for example, I was just living in Glastonbury last winter, and I could literally just walk out of my house, walk down the high street, and walk into a restaurant or walk into a store and talk to anybody at any moment in time. And then if I didn't want to, I'd just stay at my house, you know? So that was really helpful because I could interact, and I didn't need to be on social media. And I didn't need to be, you know, constantly, you know, interacting on my phone. But now being back in the United States, I've noticed that the dynamic here is social media based. And so if you're not doing that, it's like, how do you actually meet people? Because I see that most people are very isolated. They're in their minds, they're in their heads, they're focused, they're doing their thing, but they're not actually talking to people as much. And yet they are, but there's nothing of value being said. It's just, you know, whatever. Like, it takes a lot for people to engage with you in a meaningful conversation here, unless you're in a social environment, in a group, and, you know, hanging out with people. And I find that because I don't know anybody here, I'm not tapping into the events here and I'm in kind of an awkward area too. I'm in Woodland Hills, so it's like, it's not exactly LA, you know. Topanga is right here, and Santa Monica's over there, and Santa Monica has got tons of stuff going on that I would be interested in, but it's, you know, it's only 12 miles away, and it's like, you know, an hour drive or whatever, you know. It's crazy. So it's interesting. I don't really know where I'm going with this actually in this moment, other than to say that there are some tools that I think implementing would make a huge difference in creating some balance with social media, so that I feel a little bit more nourished. And one is taking a day, if possible, or at least a couple hours within a week, to go into nature and to find some nature that I can be in, and to just drop into the silence. Now here, there's no psychic space at all. Literally, I've been looking for nature, and even when there is nature, there's like 25 people next to you. Like, it is not, there's no place where you can go where there's nobody. It just doesn't happen here. If you want to go to the beach, there's like 100 people on the beach right in your immediate area. I mean, the ocean's right there, but there's 100 people around you. So it doesn't allow for that like decompression and that downtime. So how do you find that when you're in a city environment? How do you find that when, like, literally I can go on social media 24 hours a day and interact with somebody because I know people all over the world. So at any time of day or night, I'm literally constantly engaging with people now. So it's almost like a requirement for me to respond at any time of day or night, even at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, like there's all these things going on all the time. And it's like, I can plug into it or I can disconnect from it and do my own thing. So my only real psychic space is my bedroom. And so I spend a lot of time in it. And that's not healthy either. So how do we find balance with social media and with being in the world, but not of it, right? How do we do that? How can we ask those questions? How can we find solutions to this integration of social media? Well, you can take a social media sabbatical. You could take a day off from social media. It'll all be there when you get back. Literally, it'll all be there when you get back. And because otherwise you can become a slave to it, you know? And so I almost feel like I should pick a day a week that I'm just not on social media and just go with it and flow with it, and people will adjust, you know? And yeah, it's kind of a challenging situation. And I just wanted to speak to it because I know that a lot of people are experiencing that same thing where, you know, it's a requirement for them as opposed to an actual, you know, enjoyment for them. And of course, because we are desiring connection with others people, it's like people don't actually talk on the phone anymore. But my friend who's watching right now, or was watching, I don't know if she still is, but she calls me. She's like, hey, what's going on? How are you? You know? And I think the more that we do that, the more that we actually call people on the phone and actually show up and have conversation and like face to face, or we talk on the phone, we won't lose that connection element, which is really important. Because if it's all text, then it's like there's a disconnect. It's like you don't actually have to engage fully. I mean, it does require your attention and energy, but it's not like getting on the phone and being like, hi, and hearing the tone of voice and the energy and the smiles and the love that comes through that connection. So I invite you to call one of your friends that you talk to, or call somebody that you haven't talked to in a while and have a conversation. Like, take some time to make that connection, someone that you value in your life, and just have a conversation with them. And yeah, sometimes we don't have, because of the speed of what's happening in the world today, we don't have a lot of time to do that. But like last night, I had a 6-hour conversation with my sister. 6 hours catching up. Like 6 hours we were on the phone. And it was one of the best conversations I've had in a really long time. We talked about everything, you know, and this is my sister who's not in my world, doesn't, you know, but she's open. And so, and she's not very judgmental. So it was an opportunity for us to really connect. And we didn't grow up together. She was my mom's firstborn daughter. So she's older, but it was so nice. It was like family, you know, and even though we haven't had a lot of interaction, she's my sister, you know, and it really touched me that we were able to have that conversation. And that's because I reached out to her, you know. And so she had originally reached out to me and was like, hey, I'm so sorry we haven't been connected for so long. And I was like, me too, you know, like we forget the value of our relationships until we do something about them. So for me, that's important that we remind ourselves and we connect with people, like physically, like call them on the phone, text them and say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. I want to check in. I want to touch base. And that value of that connection is so deep and so important, and it grounds us and it makes us feel loved. And for me, I need to feel that. I need to feel like people really care. And when you don't talk to people all the time, that disconnection can happen where you're not sure who cares about you, or, you know, yeah, people are being friendly with you on the phone, but I mean, friendly with you online, but it's not like you're having a, you know, face-to-face conversation with them, hearing the tones of their voices and the love in their heart for you. So those things feel super important to me to share, is that, you know, maybe we need to reach out. Maybe we need to be the ones to make the effort to have that conversation. And one of my friends has been calling me more often recently because I said, hey, you know, we need to connect more often. We need to keep this going. We need to keep the conversation going. And she's literally made the effort. I haven't, she has. And I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. Okay, so there you go. You know, like I need to do that more with situations where I feel like, you know, I miss this person. I really need to touch in with them and make sure that they know how much I love them and how much they mean to me. And that's something that I don't think about all the time because I'm focused on all these other things, and our lives are so busy we don't focus on our relationships. But literally relationships are what things are built on, you know. Our whole world is built on relationships with each other, interactions. So with that, I'm going to sign off for today. It may have been a little rambly and I apologize, but I feel like I just needed to speak to that. And I love you all, and I hope you're having a great day. And signing off, Day 9, Live 365. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.